Imagine boarding a flight, expecting nothing but a smooth journey, only to face blatant discrimination. In today's story, a successful Black CEO experiences exactly that. The flight attendant, blinded by prejudice, denies him the service he rightfully deserves. But what she doesn't realize is that her actions are about to backfire in the most unexpected way. As tensions rise and passengers start to notice, the truth slowly unfolds. What led to this shocking incident? How does the CEO handle such blatant racism? And most importantly, what happens when the flight attendant realizes her mistake? Stick around, because this story takes a turn you won't see coming. The flight began like any other. Passengers settled into their seats, the hum of conversation blending with the gentle roar of the engines. Among them was Marcus, a well-dressed, confident Black man whose calm demeanor hinted at his position as a CEO. He found his seat in first class, ready to relax after a long business trip. However, things took a strange turn when the flight attendant, Susan, approached him with a tense smile. She glanced at his ticket and then at him, her expression quickly shifting. "Sir, are you sure you're in the right seat?" she asked, her tone laced with doubt. Marcus nodded, showing his ticket, but Susan's reluctance was clear. Her polite facade cracked as she questioned his presence in first class, implying he didn't belong. Passengers around them began to watch, sensing the brewing conflict. Marcus remained calm, but the air grew thick with unease. What would happen next? As Marcus maintained his composure, Susan's unease only grew. She hesitated, then leaned closer, her voice lower but no less sharp. "I think it would be best if you moved to a different seat. We have plenty available in the back." Marcus felt the weight of the moment, the subtle but clear message in her words. He took a breath, his calm exterior hiding the frustration bubbling beneath. "I'm fine here," he replied firmly, his eyes locking with hers. The tension was palpable. Other passengers started whispering, their curiosity piqued by the unusual exchange. One man in a nearby seat furrowed his brow, clearly uncomfortable with what he was witnessing. A woman across the aisle caught Marcus's eye, offering a supportive nod. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, announcing the flight's departure, but the atmosphere in first class remained strained. Marcus knew he had to stand his ground, but how far would this encounter go before the truth came to light? The flight took off, but the tension in the cabin hadn't eased. Marcus remained in his seat, his focus unwavering despite the subtle stares and murmurs around him. Susan, now visibly flustered, paced up and down the aisle, occasionally stealing glances in his direction. It was clear she wasn't ready to let it go. Finally, unable to contain her frustration, she approached Marcus again. This time, her voice carried a sharper edge. "Sir, I must insist that you change your seat," she said, her attempt at authority faltering under the weight of the situation. Marcus looked up, his expression calm but firm. "I have no intention of moving. I paid for this seat, and I have every right to be here." His words hung in the air, a quiet declaration that reverberated through the cabin. Passengers around him grew increasingly uncomfortable, sensing that something significant was unfolding. One passenger pressed the call button, hoping to defuse the situation, but the conflict had already reached a boiling point. How would this standoff end, and what consequences would follow? As the tension between Marcus and Susan continued to simmer, a senior flight attendant approached, her face a mask of professionalism. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her eyes shifting between Marcus and Susan. Before Marcus could respond, Susan spoke up, her tone defensive. "This gentleman claims he's seated correctly, but I believe there's been a mistake." The senior attendant's gaze settled on Marcus, who calmly handed over his ticket. She examined it carefully, then looked back at Susan, her expression hardening. "There's no mistake," she said firmly. "Mr. Daniels is exactly where he should be." A ripple of shock passed through the nearby passengers. Susan's face flushed as she realized her error, but before she could retreat, another voice broke through the tension. "Excuse me, A young woman from economy class called out, standing in the aisle. I couldn't help but notice what's happening. I think it's important to say something. The cabin grew even quieter, the stakes suddenly higher as the entire plane's attention shifted to this new twist. What revelation would she bring to light, and how would it change the course of this already heated encounter? Her words hung in the air, causing a ripple of discomfort through the cabin. Susan's face turned pale, her earlier confidence crumbling under the weight of the accusation. The senior flight attendant nodded, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. Thank you for speaking up, she said. Turning to Marcus, she added, Mr. Daniels, on behalf of the airline, I deeply apologize for this unacceptable treatment. As murmurs of agreement and support echoed through the cabin, Marcus gave a small, gracious nod. But just as the tension seemed to ease, Marcus stood up, holding his hand up to quiet the passengers. I appreciate the apology, but there's something you all should know, he said, his voice calm yet commanding. He pulled out his phone and tapped on a video, revealing a recording of the entire encounter. I'm not just a passenger, he continued. I'm a shareholder in this airline, and I assure you, steps will be taken to ensure this never happens again. The cabin fell into stunned silence. Susan's eyes widened in shock, realizing the full extent of her mistake. The passengers, once merely observers, now watched in awe as Marcus calmly returned to his seat. The unexpected twist left everyone reflecting on the powerful lesson in accountability and justice. As the flight continued, the atmosphere gradually shifted. Susan, humbled and remorseful, quietly resumed her duties, avoiding further conflict. The senior flight attendant assured Marcus that a formal report would be filed and steps would be taken to address the situation. Passengers, moved by the unfolding events, shared supportive words with Marcus, who remained gracious and composed. By the time the plane landed, the incident had left a lasting impression on everyone aboard. Marcus's calm but firm stance against discrimination had turned a moment of injustice into a powerful reminder of the importance of standing up for what's right. As he gathered his belongings and prepared to disembark, a few passengers approached him, expressing their admiration and gratitude for how he handled the situation. Walking through the terminal, Marcus reflected on the journey. Though it had been an unsettling experience, it also became an opportunity to spark change, leaving a mark far beyond the confines of that flight.